we want to get started. We're going to spend 30 minutes talking primarily about offshore and what that means to veterans. With us today is Captain McCormick. For most of you that are tuning in for multiple webinars, you know the captain. He's been with us for several days. He's our program director. And rather than go back through his bio, it's up online. It's up on our website at Vets4Energy.com. But he is extremely qualified to give a veteran's perspective from many angles here. And not to mention, he's just kind of a hoot to have around.
Yeah.
So let's start us off so we're all at the same place. Captain, can you just give us a minute or so on Vets4Energy? Is it a program of decent size, and what's your mission?
Well, I mean, yeah, we have grown exponentially. I mean, over the last 3 years, I would say, is we've seen a lot of significant growth. The popularity of the program comes in the fact that, you know, everybody out there that's doing this, they're volunteers. They have a very sincere love of their country. They understand the insignificance of energy security and how that really relates to a strong national security. Now, we can talk a lot about jobs, and we talk a lot about, you know, the energy industry in particular. We are an all the above energy supporting organization, and the folks that we have on our team, they understand that. Some of them are very much into the renewables, and you know, we obviously, you know, we don't turn those folks away. We actually appreciate having them because they bring some validity to what we're doing, and they also bring the reality to where renewables actually stand, and how that, you know, they are developing. And thanks to the American Petroleum Institute and their supporting partners and members, you know, there's a lot of money that goes into that research from those companies. So we're real excited. I mean, Vets4Energy has become a household name. You know, when you start to think about the energy sector, or you start to think about things that are going on in relation to, you know, whether it be gas, whether it be oil, whether it be solar, wind, whatever it may be, you know, people will come to me. They'll look and they'll ask me, and they'll ask the state chairs that are out there as well. You know, what do you think about this? Is this, you know, and I get asked a lot of questions here in the State House. So any of you that are out there that are listening that want to get more involved, you know, we can really get you engaged with your local state as a state chair. And it's a great title to have, and we do send you some, you know, we definitely support you in that. But we also, yeah.
Well, you're going to jump in there because you're talking about the state chairman, and that's a volunteer group, and you've got multiple chairmen in each state. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
And I know your main focus is on a national level, and you're working with a bunch of VSOs. You still go out and make the state visits. Mm-hmm. But with your volunteer state chairs that you've built, I guess that's in the majority of states now. Mm-hmm. Is the conversation taking on more of a local flavor?
It is. It's taken on more of a local flavor, and we want that to happen because, you know, who's better to talk about what's going on in New Mexico or North Dakota than someone that lives there, you know? And we have experts. We have people that are, you know, more qualified than I am, that are out there that are volunteering their time and their energy and their resources. And I just, you know, I can't say enough good about these volunteers because, you know, when someone volunteers their time to go out and do something like this, they really love their country and they really appreciate, and they have a sincere, a sense of obligation. You know, for us, we hung up our uniform, but we didn't hang up our responsibility. So that's what I love about Vets4Energy, and all of you that are out there that are with us, then, you know, hey, I can't say thank you enough.
Let's get on to our topic. Thank you for that. So you say we're all the above, but we're going to talk about offshore energy here.
Sure.
Why are we doing that? Why are we talking about offshore? Why is that important to veterans?
Well, it's important to veterans because it's a key component in ensuring that we have a secure energy resource. You know, offshore is critical because we have, 94% or greater of our offshore access has been inaccessible. and we're looking at, you know, the Atlantic primarily, but we also are looking at the Pacific and many areas that, you know, they talk about Alaska. You know, I mean, most of the areas around Alaska and around the Aleutian Islands, they're closed off as well. You know, we have to actually, if we're sincere about creating this energy independent or energy security America, then it's got to include offshore access. Because right now, Chandler, the big debate is not all about the drilling. It's about just the exploration, so we can find out what we've got out there. And you got people that just absolutely, they don't understand the concept of doing a good reconnaissance. And veterans, you know, they have a lot of say in that. We need to know what we have out there. If we don't know what we have, then how do we know, you know, what resources we actually have when we need it?
So you're referencing the famous term seismic, going out and saying what it is, using more modern technology than what was used 30 years ago. What's some of the, what's the controversy? Why are people fighting against that?
You know, I spoke with some folks on Tuesday in South Carolina, and some of them had very civil conversations, and that's the only kind of conversation we have. Their big pushback is they think that they're going to actually physically look out there and see oil rig after oil rig after oil rig. They're thinking that they're coming in every 500 feet and that they will not be able to see the sunset. They'll not be able to see, you know, the beaches will just be absolutely polluted because they think that they are constantly leaking, constantly, you know, discharging. And the fact is that none of that is true. Then they get into the debate about, you know, seismic surveys, which are done all around the world, by the way, for many things. And, you know, to say that that's going to interfere with wildlife, you know, I mean, it just, you know, then, you know, talking to the experts in this field, and we had one in South Carolina, and he has, you know, he has a PhD, and I mean, this guy is really sharp, and he was on the board with me in Columbia, and what this guy told me was, he says, absolutely zero issues. He says, I've been doing it for the last 27 years, and you know, the guy knows his stuff, and I mean, he's a scientist, and he said, by his own admission, he said, and I'm an environmentalist too. He said, and I wouldn't be up here saying to do it if I thought it was going to harm the environment. So. Education, Chandler, it's just a basic education piece that seems to be lacking, and people are driven by their emotions, you know, just
along with some civil conversation. That makes all the difference. For those that are new to this, I wanted to do a couple things. One is I'm putting up an online poll now. We're going to do 2 or 3 of those, and feel free to answer them. For the folks that are out there watching on the screen, this question's asking, what do you associate with offshore drilling? Go ahead and feel free to answer those. And I also want to let the newcomers know that we are taking questions on this, but to keep things timely, we're not opening the phone lines. Mm-hmm. But feel free to click that orange box up at the top right-hand corner of your screen and type a question. Send it in. We'll get to as many of those as we can today, and we can follow up with you on emails afterwards. So just type them in with that orange box up at the top. Mm-hmm. So you said you were down in South Carolina.
Yeah.
The Bureau of Energy Ocean Management, BOEM, has started conducting meetings, and I guess they're doing that from now through March 8th to open up public discussions about their new draft proposal to open up much of this off OCS, Outer Continental Shelf. And you went down to one. Did you actually get into the actual hearing? Was there an actual public meeting you were in? How did that go?
Well, they had opportunities for people to look at the data, and of course the data was there, and the data was good. The data showed safety. The data showed, numbers that the opposition didn't like. And let me just say this, okay? There are a couple of things that really just kind of aggravate me. One of them is a level of hypocrisy, and I'm standing outside with a guy that was a Korean War veteran, and we had a great conversation. And we're in there, and, everybody's pulling up in these SUVs. And I'm not kidding you when I say this. Everybody. And they had racks on the top for surfboards and bicycles. And I'm sitting there looking at them, and they're all coming out, opposing oil. All of them are not just opposing offshore, Chandler. They're opposing anything to do with petroleum, standing there wearing their neoprene suits and everything else that they wore when they came in. And, again, it comes down to education. So having the conversation generally started off with that kind of an education, letting them realize that, oil isn't just what goes into your car, or it's what you're wearing right now. And they're shocked, which I find that surprising because most of them are telling us that they're very educated people. And I'm not here to bash them at all, but I'm here to say that, the cell phones that they have, everything that they were, the cameras that they had, the recording equipment that they had, every bit of that, had plastic in it. And as we all know, where plastic comes from. So it's just, I could write a book on that stuff.
Yeah, well, I think they're sort of getting you to do a book. I know you're working on a one-pager that's talking about the battle gear that veterans wear and how much of that's made from petroleum products.
Oh, my God, yeah. Yeah, it goes all the way, Chandler. It goes all the way from, the laces that go into your boots, to your wet weather gear, to your chemical protective equipment, to your IBA, which is your individual load-bearing equipment, your rifles, your pistols. Nearly every weapon system has some sort of an epoxy resin plastic, something in it that comes from the petrochemical industry. Your bullets, our practice rounds, even when we would go down range to shoot practice rounds with a 203 grenade launcher, that is a plastic head that has talc powder in it that explodes, so you know where it lands at. Everything that you can think of, the gear that they bring your chow out in, the water jugs, the vehicles, the electricity, the hand mics for the radios. I mean, it's unbelievable. Yeah.
Well, and I think that's just people just don't, as you say, it's an education. And I consciously thinking about it, even the trucks that brings all the goodies to the grocery store and stocks the shelves. So it is a wide thing, and it's hard to make an immediate transition to solar.
Yeah.
But I think you were saying beforehand, you're all the above. Vets4Energy is a believer in solar. We like renewables. We want to work in that direction.
Yes.
But there is a need, and there is a constant demand for America's modern way of life. They demand to have this energy right now.
You're right.
So it's kind of a question of, we're going to need it. The question is, where's it going to come from?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. How do you feel about that? I mean, so this offshore is one place, and it's back to that North American energy versus coming from somewhere else. Why do we need to get it here? Why do you recommend America be getting their own?
Well, number one, I recommend it because it's the most secure source that we can get it from. And if someone's really concerned about the world environment and the environment, the ozone and everything else that they talk about out there, then they need to understand, how it is done in these other countries that we currently get. We still import, okay, and we're still importing oil, and our allies import tons and tons of it as well. So how are they producing it, has a detrimental effect on our country. So how they do it in China, how they do it in Russia, how they do it in the Middle East, and I can assure you they don't have an EPA over there. And if a group showed up to protest in Tehran against, an oil company, which, that's how they fund their war machine over there, I could imagine that, they wouldn't get the ability to talk very long. So it all goes back to, who do we want to get it from? Exactly. Do we want to get it from our enemies or our potential enemies? Do we want our allies to get it from our enemies or our potential enemies? Or do we want to do the right thing, get it from North America, make sure that we do it right the first time, and then, be able to not only supply ourselves, but supply our allies? When you do that, then you're able to kick the legs out from under some of these terrorist-funded organizations that are funded by this. It is a geopolitical weapon, my friend. It is a very powerful geopolitical weapon. The only thing that comes close to it is food. So you can deal with food, you can deal with water, and you can deal with energy. And energy is leading the pack in a lot of those things. So we have to be conscious of that.
I looked down at our list of folks that are participating here tonight, and a lot of them are familiar veterans, which means they've heard our, I was about to say rhetoric, but they've heard the message before. Right. But I want to break down, since you were just down in South Carolina, and after the meetings and after your press conference you did down there, you actually went out to the protesters and you started talking to them one-on-one. From when you were talking about that, it sounded like they broke up into two categories, one being a little stronger than the other one, but some are against any oil and natural gas, any fossil fuel, and the other ones are more specific about the offshore. Is that true? Is there any difference between those two?
It is true. There are some that support American energy. They just don't support the American energy that comes from off their coast. There's a lot of the not in our backyard folks, and those folks we were able to have a good conversation, and we talked about the things, what's important for our country, and none of them said they wanted to continue the war in the Middle East. And, my answer to that is that if you don't want to continue the wars in the Middle East, then you have to cut off the money that funds the treacherous activities that terrorists are, performing against humanity. I mean, it's not just against Americans, but it's against, good God, look how they treat the women over there. And, most of those folks that were in there protesting were women. And I said, well, when we don't do it here, then you're going to be supporting Iran. Do you like supporting Iran? And, some of them were like, well, we don't care. We don't care. And it's like, you don't care. And if you were a woman over there, you would have to wear a hijab. You would have to, keep your mouth shut. And if your husband didn't like what you were saying, he could take you on the steps and beat you. And that, my friend, is the kind of silliness that foreign energy imports is supporting. And that's just the truth. That's just the God's honest truth.
Well, and there's also pieces of when America does import some of their oil and natural gas, and they still import a certain percentage of it. There's a little bit more control on where that comes from. But when our allies buy it, because they need to get oil or natural gas, their resources are a little fewer on where they can get it from. How do you feel about that part of the geopolitical side of why don't we offer it to them versus forcing them to buy from enemies?
Well, let me tell you, I met with General Micah of the Polish Armed Forces. He commands all the Polish Armed Forces. And I can tell you this right now, that if they could purchase it all from us, they would. The Swiss, they're the same way. They're moving to a natural gas. They're moving away from nuclear, and they're primarily hydro over there, which is good. We support that too. But they are looking at natural gas. They're a landlocked country. Where else are they going to get it from other than, whoever's going to bring it to them? Now, if it's not us, then it's going to be, Saudi, Yemen, Iran, Russia, whoever. And I think that for us, we are setting ourselves up for another world war if we're not careful, or another Cold War, because you see that movement. We saw that go on in the Balkans. We saw that go on in the Ukraine here recently. You're starting to see that creep back to that Soviet Union type mentality that it's kind of concerning. There's a lot of things going on in Antarctica as well, in the Arctic. We got to be careful of that. We got to watch. We need to make sure that we can do it for ourselves and supply our allies.
One of the slides is up right now, and it might have spurred this question that came in that says, what do you tell people that are saying offshore is not safe? Of course, they're referencing the Deepwater Horizon spill or anything that they hear about the catastrophes that are here and there.
Yep.
How do you address that question?
Well, I address that question like I address any questions about safety and security. Understand, before I left to go back on active duty, I was an occupational safety and health specialist and worked down in Buffalo, New York. And I did a lot of studies and understand that there are a lot of things that are dangerous out there. What we do is we improve on that. We mitigate the hazards. But let's just look at something like driving. Like I explained to folks, there is a certain hazard in driving, and I can promise you that offshore drilling is 3,000 times safer than you driving from point A to point B. And they drive all over the place. We all do. How many people slip and fall in the bathroom, taking a bath? But do we stop taking a bath? Because it's unsafe. We just got to stop. Somebody's going to get killed. And people have been killed, slipping and falling in the bathroom. And people have choked to death on chewing gum, but you don't see them banning chewing gum. There's just a whole list of things. You can go look it up as well. Go to a site that talks about, bizarre accidents, and safety, safety regulations and standards, and just look at what happens, to how many people slip and fall and die in the bathroom. So anyways,
yep.
Improvements have been made, Chandler, greatly. Some of our members work in the energy industry. I think of Nick. Nick worked out there on those oil platforms, and he was part of a safety response team. Their whole goal was to maintain the equipment that they could immediately deploy if they had some sort of an incident. And all of those came from lessons learned. We as soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, and Coast Guard members, anytime we go out and train, I promise you people make mistakes. But we go and we learn from those mistakes. And like I said, we develop and mitigate those future mistakes by things like what BP has done to improve their safety record and to make sure they know how to plug the worst case scenario. They had the worst case scenario occur to them. And now they know how to fix that. So
good.
I'm excited about the safety improvements just in the last 3 years. It's just unbelievable.
It is a quickly changing field, which if you do come to the Vets4Energy website, there are many resources and places they can send you to elaborate on any of these, and safety is one of them. One question just came in that's talking about, let's take it off the shoreline for a minute and have a discussion about the country or even into the Midwest. So we know that the shoreline states, part of the conversation there is if we do start doing more offshore exploration, how's that going to benefit the states? And they'll get the economic pieces, they'll get the job pieces, they'll get revenue share. But what does that mean to inside the country and the rest of America?
Well, that absolutely means a more secure energy resource, so that when you go to the gas tank or when you go to buy that cup of coffee at Starbucks or whatever it is that you use or buy or consume that is a petroleum-based product, then you know that it's coming from an American, North American energy producing operation, and it's not money that's being funneled back into the hands of our enemy. And like it or not, if you don't support American energy, then you support the energy that is supplying the beans and the bullets that are of the people that are fighting against us. That's just the bottom line. I don't know how much clearer that I can make it, other than to say that there's factual information out there. There is satellite imagery that you can even look and see now. If you go do a little Google research there, you can see the satellite imagery of those hijacked oil tankers that were taken across the border into Turkey, Syria, Iran, and they were sold into the black market. They were reflagged, and then it ended up into the European market, or heck, maybe even into the American market. Who knows? But I do know this. It happens, and it's continuously happening now. And for those people that are in the Midwest, this affects them just as much as it affects the people on the coast. We all have to get engaged with this.
Got another question that came in about,
Sure.
it's completely unrelated, but it's back to the big brother. This one says it's all about corporate greed. It's all
Okay.
about the big guy trying to get the money, the oil companies, the bad guys. How do you address those?
Well, I say this. Whoever sent that question in, let me ask you a question. Do you have a job? Do you work anywhere? It's not about corporate greed. It comes down for us. It has nothing to do with greed for us because our people are volunteers. It comes down to us in the fact that do we want to send our money in and put it into our adversary's pocket? If that person likes to do that, then that's a decision that they make, and that's a conscious decision they make. But it is truly not about corporate greed. Corporate greed is a term that has been used and kicked around a whole lot. I would say that of the 10 million plus people that work in the energy industry that have jobs and careers now that provide for them and their family, I would say that those folks are pretty happy to have those jobs. And the fact that we could create hundreds of thousands of more jobs because we're bringing not only the energy production back into the United States, but what else comes along with that? We bring back, our factories. We bring back the made in America again. So it's not just about energy, folks. It's about the overall picture of how our country is posturing to be able to be more secure.
Conveniently, one of our chairmen that's on the call says, okay, so what do you want us to do?
Outstanding.
I'll leave it to you, but I will tell you I put up a slide that shows our website with a button on it that says how to send a comment into BOEM.
Yeah, that's the big thing is let your voice be heard. Go off to the everybody needs to open up the BOM response, the offshore access, and put your heart into that thing. Take a look at it, read up on it. We're not telling you what to say. We would never do that. We're telling you that just, do something. If your response is that, we want to do it and we want to do it right and do it safe, then my gosh, please do it. Do that. Follow your conscience on this. For me, I got 2 sons that are serving. And every time that I think about the potential that some American money is floating overseas that could potentially buy the bullets that are going to kill my sons, it goes through me like a bullet. And this is so much more than just, a way to make oil companies and gas companies more money, folks. This is about keeping our American service members at home as much as we can, and to be able to have such a strong national security posture through energy security that no one wants to reach out and tag us anymore. They will absolutely, we need to posture ourselves to have that strong outward appearance. And then as chairman, we need to go forward and discuss this with as many people as we can. We need to engage the people in your community, write op-eds. We send those out all the time. We would love to have more of you in the local media, in your state houses, and we can help set that up for you as well. So,
and it's interesting how when you're saying that, our Facebook, we've got 70 some odd thousand fans that are following us, and that's primarily focused on the international side of natural gas and oil. What's other countries doing? So, we'll put up some news stories that's talking about North Korea and them trying to get oil from other places since they're being stopped on that, and how countries are fighting for their own energy security. We kind of miss that here in America. It seems to be we're isolated from that.
Mm-hmm.
Are you finding that out when you talk to veterans, or do veterans have a better feel for the global perspective?
Well, they have a better feel for the global perspective because they understand, that, that's a critical aspect in logistics to keep the machines running. It's not, and the troops going. Again, there's so much more than just fuel that goes into your vehicles. And, yes, they do. And they understand that the reason why that we spend a tremendous amount of time in the Middle East, and we have since a long time. I mean, if you go back to the Beirut bombing in '83, You know, we can go back up many, many years, and we can see so much blood and treasure that's being exhausted into that part of the world simply because we're trying to keep these resources, you know, moving, not just for us, but to our allies. Understand that, you know, I mean, we could be totally energy independent, but our allies cannot. And when our allies are not energy independent, then that puts us at risk of losing, you know, I mean, you can't just pull in everything and set up the boundaries around America and not have a footprint anyplace else. So it's just, and veterans understand that. They understand that very well.
Up on the screen now, back to the BOM and the public hearings, we put up a list of the sites and the dates where they are conducting hearings. So if anyone on the line sees one that's coming up by you, feel free to, again, come to the Vets4Energy website, and it'll tell you where the exact location is and where the times are. Again, whatever your feeling is, it's nice to have the public opinion show up at those.
Yeah, and the opposition, they show up, and they show up in rather large numbers. And I'll tell you, there's a tactic that's being used, probably the most disgusting display of stolen valor that I saw at this event yesterday. And it was perpetrated by this group that decided to hand out hats to individuals. And these hats had, you know, one guy, and I'll just go to the one guy, but there were more than just this one guy. But one guy had on a hat that had the 101st Airborne patch on it. Now, I served in the 101st Airborne, and when I walked up and I asked this guy, and he looked at me, and I said, oh, so you served, did you? He said, yes, I did. I said, what unit did you serve in? He said, and he pointed at his hat, he said, the 82nd. He said, duh, you know, kind of looking at me like, are you kidding me? Now, I started to call him out right there on the spot. And as I started to question him a little bit more, the guy turned and he just got to stepping in the other direction. So, you know, there are some veterans and, you know, there are some fake people out there that are showing up to these events, and they're wearing hats and they're wearing T-shirts and they're putting on the biggest. You know, it's not hard to get a hat that says I served, and for us, it's really important for us, the legitimate veterans, to be there, not to, you know, stomp their guts out, but to call their hand on these things and to say, you know, I mean, just a simple conversation with that guy, I realized, and then I'm watching outside as these people are coming in. One guy, he puts on a sling as he walks in, Chandler. He put a sling on. Now, he was moving his arm when he got out there. Then he puts on a sling, okay? And then he puts on this, you know, this wounded wear hat. You know, it didn't say wounded warrior, but a wounded wear, which, you know, some of us that have been wounded, you know we can go pick this stuff up anywhere. But then he walks in there. I mean, is he trying to you know, say that he's a wounded veteran and I'm hobbling in here to oppose, you know, offshore energy production? I don't think so. I think the guy's a sham and a fraud, you know.
That PR game is a completely different animal.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
So we're going to go ahead and stop this, and we spent our half an hour, and we've got two other questions that we didn't get to in the general nature of that we'll get back to directly. But I did want to say, you know, just on what you're just saying, last words, is it worth vets to have an opinion, to stand up for an opinion, to come out and say what they believe? I know it's kind of a teeing up question for you, but you got any last words?
Yeah, absolutely. Your voice needs to be heard. You need to step up and stand in the gap because, again, like I said, you're going to have people that are out there that, you know, maybe the guy was a veteran, maybe he's not. I'd say no. But you're going to have people like that are going to say they're representing you. And that is just not what we, the legitimate veterans of the United States of America, want representing us. We don't want this to happen because then the next thing you know, we all lose our credibility because of a few, you know, stolen valor guys out there that are just doing this because they're trying to prop up some political position that opposes our national security and a secure energy resource for America. And that's all they're doing, folks. That's really all they're doing. there's not a lot of meat on the bone to what they're saying, because when you get into the conversation, one of two things happen. Either they don't say anything, they walk away, or they start to cry and scream. It's just not it's hard to have those civil conversations, but some of them will. And I think it's important that we do have those conversations. And most importantly, to ensure that Americans are seeing real veterans speaking up on this issue, and not some of the folks that I met down there. So thank you very much.
It's a pleasure, James. Thanks for being with us. Thanks for everybody for tuning in. And we hope to have you on one of our future webinars. Everyone, have a good evening.
All right. Thanks a lot. Good night.